Hi everyone, Mike Levin here. July 1st, 2016, at around 1 p.m. Heading off to meet my daughter, who's in the Catskills right now, taking a week-long swimming course at her grandparents' place up there. And I'm heading up there to meet them, and then I'll be bringing Addie back to the City House in Inwood, New York, because she misses the kitties. I had mentioned, I guess, Billy, Sammy, and Charlie at one point over the phone in my nightly goodnight calls, and I think it really released something that was building up there, so I'm going to get her back to see the three kitties. And I always thought of her life being sort of being a junior Jane Goodall, growing up making observations amongst the much wildlife and seeing the interactions between them, which is endlessly entertaining. And she has three kitties on the other side, but Billy, Sammy, and Charlie are the ones she grew up with, and I think it's time she hang out with them again. And we're going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. Part of my job is to teach her Dungeons and Dragons, so she meets the prerequisites for a advanced class. I think it's 7-year-olds for Dungeons and Dragons, or shall we call it role-playing game probability math. And I'm sure for young kids like that, they'll be talking about odds and statistics. And segue, statistics and data. Well, I certainly am on a mission these days to reposition myself somewhere else professionally while staying exactly where I'm at. I had discussed the sort of war Google is going on against people in my field, although it would never outright be called that. Google is just trying to do better, and those of us whose business it is to make sure that websites are receiving their fair share of traffic for free through natural organic search are between a rock and a hard place right now as machine learning hits and Google grows up and gets past the infancy days, for which Google is the perfect name. It's like a little baby word, Google, and it's like a little baby starting to open its eyes for the first time. Now, before you start going thinking I'm laying the groundwork for a singularity Skynet argument, I'm not. Machine learning is awesome, and it dovetails and ties in with all this other stuff I'm doing with Python and Jupyter Notebook, except that it does take a significant amount more computing resources than is my real shtick and desire to speak about. I'm all about an extremely tiny, efficient programming stack or platform, getting the whole software footprint down to about 60 megabytes. That's like these tiny. The running RAM footprint is larger, usually about 512 megs, I believe I have it set at, but still, that's a 512 megabyte system. Nothing about it is even measured in gigabytes. And that's Linux, and a lot of my development work has been focused on keeping it small and tiny, with a future in mind where that is going to be a benefit, but we are not in that future. We are in the present of quad-core CPUs, so everything should have a little bit of inherent parallelism built in. Some people call it concurrency, but what we're really talking about is when you run multiple things at once on the same computer, it can get broken into smaller tasks and run in parallel between the 4 cores and get something done potentially in 1/4 the time. Even the Raspberry Pi has upgraded to quad core. So this is mainstream stuff, and you can't leave parallelism out of the picture. And I want to, because it makes everything more complicated. And Python, my programming platform of choice, is not a parallelism-centric environment. It's more like a single task or single thread centric, with lots of ways to get parallelism, even transparent ways, using some different execution platforms like Euphora. So without learning an additional thing, you can take advantage of that type of hardware. But, so where am I going with this? The whole SEO thing. Well, I'm way more technical than your typical SEO, and I'm not going to be going the route of being forced off into silly things because my field is changing underneath of me. I'm riding that fault line, walking along as Google evolves, and I evolve right along with it. And I think it's time to invoke my initials, Mike Levin, ML, for machine learning, and be sort of adjusting my development path to take advantage of parallel hardware, greater resources, heavier weight local machines and not servers, which is a big difference from the way I've been working lately. Controlled code execution environments used to mean servers. Now they can mean not even a virtual machine on your desktop, just Anaconda, a bunch of pre-compiled, perfect for your desktop environment executables that have the perfect UI slapped on it in the form of Jupyter notebooks, and the code is reliable, and if you send the Jupyter notebook and its resources to other people, it'll run exactly the same way on their desktops. And if you got a quad core down there, maybe it'll take advantage of it at some point. We'll have to see. But it does set the stage for my next step of evolution, which is being thrust along this crazy path that, you know, I didn't follow through with scientific or engineering paths in life. I shied away from them in college because things like physics 1 and calculus 2 pretty much did me in. And so I was like, oh, I can't be a scientist. So now it feels a little bit pretentious in repositioning myself into a part of the field labeled data science, but nonetheless, that is what I'm doing. And after the bright flare up and when all the keywords burn off, what'll be left is just what SEO has become. And it'll be a much more, I think, love-worthy place for me to be, because I didn't feel a lot of love for that old long tail marketing world, where larger and often trashier sites meant more search hits. Although I, not directly through making sites that played into that awful scenario, I made tools that helped other people do it in the form of HitTail, 10-year-old Web 2.0 site, still going strong, bought by a Russian dude after micropreneur Rob Walling moved on to other things in life, mostly his drip promotion platform. Yay, go him. But the point is that HitTail was still valuable, and that technique of taking what's almost working for you and doing a little more of it deliberately, playing into the factors that are being smiled on today, is still perfectly viable. And I'm taking that to the next level, but in the non-long tail approach, which basically means fewer, better pages. And I have a whole bunch of projects circling around in my head, which will probably become the basis of a new book that I'm doing, which, for lack of anything better, it'll be SEO science, right? All comes together. Well, thanks for joining me. I gotta hop in my car now and get off to Catskills. Hope to see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.